Battle is not yours. It's the Lord. It's the Lord. Yeah. It's the Lord. Hold your head up high. It's the Lord. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Sister Jazz, how you doing, sweetie? I don't know how hot it is in Puerto Rico, but it is hot here. I'm just going to give it a few minutes, see if anyone else jumps on. I'm sure a lot of others will catch this on the replay. I hope you're having a good day. This is actually going to be a quick live. It won't be long. We're dealing with a lot of genealogy in First Chronicles. Really, the first 10 chapters of First Chronicles is genealogy, but there are some really good nuggets that you can pull from it. And we're going to go ahead and get started, my sister. And those who catch us on the replay, catch us on the replay. Now, First Chronicles basically is talking about the children of Israel from the time of Abraham. The genealogy of those first 10 chapters is really the line up until, actually they go up until Christ. So what we're going to do in chapter 3, we're going to look at the descendants of David and Solomon, and it talks a lot about the kings of Judah. So what we're going to do is just pull out a couple of things. And how you doing, Sister Amida? Why don't you just tell me real quick, how is the sound? Because I'm in a car and I want to make sure the sound is good. Okay, good. Thank you, sis. All right. So again, we're going to turn this off. So again, that First Chronicles 3 through 5, we're going to stick to those chapters because there's a lot of good stuff in here, but we're going to stick to our assignment. And what I want to extract from chapter 3 is when it talks about David, it starts off telling us specifically that David had 6 children in Hebron by his 6 wives. Each wife had a kid. So also he had concubines at that time, but it did not list those children specifically. It tells us who the 6 children were by those 6 wives. And David was there for 7 years. Then after the combination of the kingdom, and I don't want to get off into that, he went to Jerusalem and he reigned 33 years. Now, the first thing I wanted to pull out was in verse 9, when they mention, hold on one second, I want to go to that. Chapter 3, verse 9. Let's look at that real quick. And it says, these were all the sons of David, beside the sons of the concubines and Tamar, their sister. And I just want to pause there for a second, because in the genealogy, there are only a handful of times where they actually list a woman's name. But what's very interesting about verse 9 and them mentioning Tamar, we have to pause and look at that and wonder, why is Tamar mentioned in this verse? Now, first, let me clarify. This is not the same Tamar that we met back in Genesis, who slept with her father-in-law. I don't want to go down that road. I just want to make a distinction. This is not the same Tamar that tricked her father-in-law into sleeping with her by pretending she was a harlot after her husband died. So this Tamar here is actually one one of David's daughters. Why is she mentioned here? I believe she's mentioned for several reasons. Tamar was supposed to be extremely beautiful. David had a son named Amnon who was extremely attracted to his sister. I mean, this is some reality stuff right here. The genealogy, if you can get past the names, you can pull a lot of stuff out of here. We keep telling you there is no more drama, intrigue, whatever you're looking for in movies or a book, you got it in the Bible. Because just in this genealogy, we got adultery, we got incest, we got murder, we got liars, we got schemers, and just downright scoundrels, but they're listed. And what I want to pause on is Tamar, I believe, is mentioned in this chapter specifically. Even though she's a woman, I think her significance in the family of David might be one of the reasons she's listed here. Long story short, Tamar's half brother Amnon was extremely attracted to his sister Il, and he went so far as to pretend to be sick to get her in his house. Long story short, he raped her. And in some further chapters down the road, that's going to be dealt with. So I don't want to go off into all of that, but I want you to keep this in your mind. When he raped her, he then discarded her. He could have taken her as his wife, covered her, but he chose not to do that. So number one, he violated this woman who was his half sister. Not only did he violate her, but then he violated the Jewish law, because he could have taken her because she was a virgin. He could have covered her, because if you were not a virgin, your prospects for getting married were slim to none. And in that day, not being married or covered almost meant you would be destitute, because you had no way to support yourself unless you turned to prostitution. So I have to bring that out so you understand why they would put her here. They put her here because this guy rapes his sister, then refuses to cover her. Then when David, their father, hears about it, he gets angry, but he does nothing. Now, you got to remember this, because this is going to be real significant, and it matters a lot to the genealogy of this family, which is why I'm not skipping over it. So we have this brother who's violated his sister, then refuses to do the right thing according to the Jewish law, and just leaves her out there. Now, her brother Absalom, when he heard about this, he wanted vengeance. Now, I'm going to pause here, but I want you to keep this in mind as we continue to walk through the Bible. The fact that Amnon raped his sister did not make amends according to the Jewish law, then David also did nothing. This fueled the anger of Absalom. And we have to know why this is significant to the genealogy, because this incident shook the whole kingdom of David. Now, I'm going to leave that there because there's some good stuff. If you want excitement, if you want drama, if you want intrigue, keep walking with us through this Bible. So I'm going to pause there regarding Tamar, but keep that in your mind, because when we get to 2 Samuel, boy, this story, I'm telling you, it has everything. So the other thing I want to point out in chapter 3 is the fact that not only is Tamar mentioned, but when we look at verse 5, it says, and these were born unto him in Jerusalem. And excuse me if I'm butchering these names: Shemiah and Shobah and Nathan and Solomon, 4 of Bathshua, the daughter of Amiel. And that Bathshua is also pronounced Bathsheba. Now, again, remember, I told you there are only a handful of women throughout the Bible that are listed in any of the accounts of genealogy. So whenever you see a woman's name listed in the genealogy, if you don't already know her story, it would benefit you to pause, look her up, look at the scripture reference, and read her story, because nothing is put here by accident or to just take up space. Any woman that you see here, either she holds a place of honor, there was something devastating that happened to her, or her very life changed the line of the Israelites. So we see in chapter 3, we're going to move on, but I want you to just look at verse 5. We got Bathsheba. Why is Bathsheba mentioned in verse 5? I'm sure you know, the people that are on here, y'all know. Bathsheba was the wife of Uriah. And we all know that story. I don't want to get into it, but David was home when he shouldn't have been home. He checked her out, wanted her, did whatever. I'm not going to get into it because I don't want to ruin it before you get to that part. But that relationship she had was so significant, it had to be mentioned in the genealogy. And also there's another woman mentioned in verse 19. So on your free time, if you don't know Shalemith's story, look her up. Now let's move on to chapter 4. And we're going to wrap this up because, like I said, I'm not going to go through reading all these names. Half of them. Oh my gosh, did I lose you? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I thought I lost you. That's me. Just one moment. Okay. My heart almost sunk. Okay, so let's move to chapter 4. Chapter 4, we're talking about the descendants of Judah and Simeon. And also in verse 3, there's a woman listed. Her name is, let me try to get this right, Hazel Laponi. And I think that's a butcher, but don't crucify me. But I want you to look her name up and check out her story, and you'll understand why she is listed in this genealogy. Now, the major thing I wanted to pull out from verse 9, I'm sure most of you, hey, Brother Rob, blessings. I'm sure most of you have heard about the prayer of Jabez. And it's significant that this prayer is stuck in there in the middle of a genealogy. Verse 9 says, and Jabez was more honorable than his brethren. And his mother called his name Jabez, saying, because I bear him with sorrow. And Jabez, in verse 10, it says, and Jabez called on the God of Israel, saying, oh, that thou would bless me indeed and enlarge my territory, that thine hand might be with me, and thou wouldest keep me from evil, that it may not grieve me. And God granted him that which he requested. Now, there was a time period, I think back in the 90s or the early 2000s, everybody was praying the prayer of Jabez. But what's significant here is the fact that it's telling us in the midst of this genealogy that Jabez was more honorable. And the fact that this man walked in honor when he prayed, enlarge my territory, just because he was an honorable man, God heard his prayer and granted it. Now, if you study more about Jabez, you will find out there was a lot of craziness that his brothers got into. And again, I keep telling you, if you want excitement and intrigue, the Bible is one of the most exciting books ever written. There is nothing that any screenwriter could ever think of to surpass what's in the Bible, because it has everything in here. And the other thing that I think is significant as we read through this genealogy, all the dirt, all the mistakes that these people got themselves into, God did not write them off or hide them from the history. And I believe one of the things, and I said this before, I believe one of the things that God was showing us, number one, that he loves us, he's a redeemer, he's a forgiver, and also, most importantly, we should never be ashamed of where or who we descended from. Because if God could keep the murderers, the liars, the thieves, the molesters, and the ancestors directly in our face in this genealogy, then we should never be ashamed of what came before us. Okay, let's wrap this up. Chapter 5. Chapter 5 deals with the descendants of Reuben, Gad, and half the tribe of Manasseh. Now, we remember Reuben. Reuben is the firstborn of Jacob, who was renamed Israel. Remember, Reuben was the son that had the audacity to sleep with one of his father's wives. Now, that's one of the worst things he could have done according to Jewish law. But yet, whenever they do the genealogy, he is never left out. What is that telling us? He's a redeemer. He will forgive. It says in verse 1, the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel. He was the firstborn, but his birthright was given to the sons of Joseph, son of Israel, because Reuben defiled his father's bed. He is not listed in the genealogy according to birthright. Judah became strong among his brothers, and a ruler came from him. The birthright was given to Joseph. So even though Reuben made that crazy mistake, his children are still listed in this genealogy. And when you look through verse 5, it tells you chapter 5, it tells you in verse 25, they began to transgress against the God of their fathers and went whoring after the gods of the people of the land. Doesn't that sound familiar? Remember the children of Israel. When they were in Egypt, they did it. When they were in the wilderness, they did it. When they went into the land of Canaan, at certain points, they still got involved. What is that telling us? Even though they kept messing up, God yet had a plan for a redeemer to reconcile man back to him. Now, I hope you got something out of that. And don't let the genealogy dissuade you, because I'm telling you, even I had to, get my mind past those names. And when I did, and you start digging, you find some good stuff, even in the genealogy. So I hope you all enjoy the rest of the day. I don't know how hot it is wherever you are, but it is hot, hot, hot down here. So stay safe in this heat. Don't forget, we have service tonight. Apostle is preaching at another church. It's listed on the Facebook page. And don't forget, walking through this word, this is his love story to you. Blessings. Love you.